experience in non-Adventist educational settings, but I'm guessing that there would be a whole range of factors that we could identify that might have to do, with factors inside the community here that might push people out. Also with the fact that consciousness raising happens on Adventist campuses as well as non-Adventist ones, and some people may take that and run with it outside the community. And then there's just the influences in the wider culture that it's pretty hard, I think, in a place like this to really insulate people against over long periods. But in any event, I think, when I think about the people I know well, I would guess that, 75% probably
dropped out.
Have dropped out, or at least have very tenuous relationships.
Yeah, after getting like a PhD and
or just heading out to work.
Yeah, heading out to work. Interesting. So what's kept you Seventh-day Adventist?
I'm sure there are lots of different things, but one thing I'd say is that this community is a community where I have found it possible to be Adventist while exploring and continuing to grow personally and intellectually and culturally in a way that I might not have in some other settings. I mean, I think there are just a lot of people here who want to nurture and be supportive when friends and colleagues and students and so forth are exploring and growing. And so I think that there's a level of nurture and support that makes it possible to spread one's wings a bit here. And so I think I've stayed Adventist because I could here. And I'm grateful to the teachers and friends and so forth who made that possible and made this a welcoming environment. I don't feel like asking questions or pushing the envelope in various ways is something that my faculty colleagues are interested in punishing. Rather, I think they're interested in learning from that.
Mm-hmm. So, what did you study at grad school?
Well, I guess so. I first went to grad school outside of Adventism at what's now Claremont Graduate University, and started there in a program in the philosophy of religion and theology. And then I ended up finishing my doctoral work at the University of Cambridge in England, where again I worked in Christian ethics and theology and the philosophy of religion. And then I went back to school 7 years after I finished my PhD to get a law degree at UCLA, where I tried to focus as little as possible on probably the practice of law, and again focused either on the philosophy of law or on law and public policy and constitutional law kinds of issues. So, at different points, the degrees that I've got are either in theology or law, and then there's a lot of philosophy mixed in there.
So you did a law degree as well?
Yeah.
How did you like that?
I think the way you reason in law is very similar to the way you reason in philosophy and theology, and so for me, as somebody who'd been interested in law and politics for years, my undergrad degree was in history and political science, I was fascinated by that and had been interested in studying stuff related to law for a long time. And I don't know what other law school environments are necessarily like, but UCLA was a great place where I met great classmates and great teachers, and found my horizons expanded. And actually a lot of the academic work that I've done in recent years has been somewhere at the intersection of law and philosophy, and I've certainly done some stuff in theology recently, but a lot of my work has been legal.
So when you were a kid, what did you plan to be when you grew up?
I suppose there must have been some point at which I imagined doing medicine like my dad. I think, there was, I think I had vague ideas of being involved in politics probably when I was in junior high, the beginning of high school. I think when I discovered high school as a kind of community environment that I hadn't experienced in elementary school, I felt like I belonged a lot more. I started thinking about high school teaching. I could be part of this environment over the long term. And then when I got to college, it hit me that university teaching might be more appealing. And so I originally, I think, as an undergrad, thought I was going to be an academic, probably in the area of political philosophy. And then partway through my undergrad experience doing history, I figured out I was very interested in theology. And so that's why I headed that direction in grad school. I spent time after finishing the PhD really unclear on what I was going to do because I just didn't seem to be getting the kind of academic job opportunities that I wanted. And so that's why I went back to law school. But fortunately, that didn't ultimately lead to a completely different career path, and instead it just did what I'd sort of hoped it would do, which was to expand my academic options. And so, of course, now I have ended up with an academic position at Chartier.
I kind of look at my dad as a rock star of Seventh-day Adventist life.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Who are the rock stars of Seventh-day Adventist life?
It's hard for me to say that now, as Adventism is much more fragmented, there are people who play that role as obviously. I think, even a quarter century ago when your dad got so much public attention, I think Adventism, certainly in English-speaking Adventism, I think was a good deal more cohesive. Maybe that's just an excuse for my not being able to think of obvious people, but.
Also, it's. I mean, I would see my dad get mobbed.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever he
yeah.
go, people would like swarm him.
Sure.
Seventh-day Adventists do have a very high percentage of what my brother would call nutters. And people would, just get off on eschatology and,
sure.
Just like conspiracy theorists.
Sure.
And
sure.
Because it's an eschatological religion.
Right.
And, but yeah, I would see my dad and people would be swarming him, the same way that someone, not quite the same way as Britney Spears is swarmed, but still, when you walk into a room, there's one person there that everyone wants to
right.
talk to.
Right.
Like I've gone to parties where there was Martin Amis, the novelist,
mm-hmm.
and who wrote God Is Not Great?
Chris Hitchens.
And Chris Hitchens. Okay,
mm-hmm.
I went to one party with both of them. They were rock stars. They
sure.
were mobbed. Everyone
sure.
wanted to hang out and talk with
sure.
them. So my dad was a rock star, and I'm trying to think, it's the controversial, high-profile speakers. I
right.
think speaking, it's the eloquent speakers who are the rock stars of Seventh-day Adventist life. What do you think of that theory? The people who can move vast audiences.
Well, I think that's a theoretical account of it that certainly captures what mattered where your dad was concerned.
Yeah.
I think that's clear. I think somebody who is obviously just a tremendously gifted communicator and a very quick thinker who therefore can impress people both. As not everybody can, both with rhetorical flourishes
yeah.
and with intellectual firepower. And I think that's certainly, that's the kind of thing that does impress Adventists. But I don't know who could pack a hall right now somewhere in Southern California.
Yeah.
And I'm just not sure that I can think of somebody who's
who can make people cry.
Yeah, no, I think that's...
Craig Smuts Van Ryan?
Yeah, but sure.
I don't know what's happened over the last 25 years.
Smuts...
I remember he was a pretty powerful speaker when I was a kid.
Smuts is an excellent speaker, and I don't actually know quite where he is. He was pastoring out here for a long time. He was sort of rehabilitated and was pastoring both in Glendale and in Riverside. But I'm embarrassed that I don't know where Smuts is now. Certainly for people who are aware of him, he would probably bring a fairly large crowd out, and certainly he could make them cry.
Mm-hmm. I
But